I'm joined by former Kilkenny hurler Michael Rice. Just 8 All-Irelands, 9 Leinsters, 6 leagues as well, and a couple of All-Stars to wash it down. How are you getting on?
I'm very good, Shane. Yourself?
Ashram, not too bad. Are you excited about Kilkenny against Galway in a Leinster final this Saturday evening, 6:15?
Absolutely, because obviously we thought there would be no hurling had at all this year. So yeah, it's great that it's on. I mean, there's lots of matches coming up this weekend, and I think it's very exciting for all hurling people. But yeah, I think look, Kilkenny Galway. I think it's always a massive battle between the two teams, and both coming in with, I suppose, different sets of form from the semi-finals. So it'll be very interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, and obviously I want to talk about the form line so far this year. But just jumping back to when Galway were first introduced to the Leinster Championship in 2009, you would have played that first game I think Joe Canning had scored the goal early and you kind of turned it around. What were your thoughts of Galway actually being introduced into the Leinster Championship?
I thought it was a good move. I mean, look, we knew they were going to be a serious opposition coming into Leinster. But look, I thought it made the Leinster Championship more exciting, and has made it more exciting since. Look, it's an extra team in the Championship straight away, but it's a quality opposition as well coming in. And look, I think like you said, that match in Tullamore was a huge battle for us that year. That goal from Joe early on, and I mean, were put to the pin of our collar. I think Owen Larkin on that day stood up in the second half and might have scored 4 or 5 points from play that got us over the line, and to win that match down in Tullamore, it was great from my point of view, because it was a championship start that kind of got me on the right road for that year in general. So it was a one that lives long in the memory for myself. But I mean, it was a feisty battle, I think I remember as well at certain times during that match. But then in 2010, I think we met them again, and that was in Croke Park, and
you won well. I
think we won well that day, and that was a thing, I suppose, going up against Galway on different years at that early stages. You kind of weren't sure. You had to be ready for the battle, but some days you go out and look, you had it in that situation in 2010 where we kind of eased to victory, and just didn't seem that Galway were at the pitch at that time. But then you look on to 2012, and they pretty much annihilated us in a Leinster final, and on a tough day for all Kilkenny people. But and then we met them again in the All-Ireland final that year as well, and put to the pin of our collar, had to go to a replay, and we eventually got over the line. And I suppose just thinking about this match, since that 2009 time, and certainly from 2012 on, Galway have always been there or thereabouts. They put a consistency together. They have a great bunch of players from that time, really. Obviously, Joe leading the charge there, but David Burke as well, Dahi Burke, Road McInerney, two Manions as well. So they have a real kind of stable bunch of players there from 2012 on to 2015 All-Ireland as well. And obviously the last few years they've been semi-final or final up until last year, where they was a freak situation where they lost out in that last game against Dublin, and the draw happened down in Wexford Park. So look, they're serious opposition for a long time. But now what I've noticed, like we've all probably noticed from the last match, they have that mix now. They're introducing a few new players, and Shane O'Neill seems to be putting his stamp on it.
Yeah, and do you think that Galway going into Leinster has kind of turned them around and made them more consistent team? Because before that, they beat Kilkenny in All-Ireland semi-finals and they went on to lose their All-Irelands. But like some years they're up, some years they're down. But do you think that they've gotten the reason that they're in so many All-Ireland semi-finals and finals recently is because of that Leinster move?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's not something that I would have thought about that deeply, because I don't spend that much time thinking about Galway as much as Kilkenny, obviously. But yeah, like you look at the time, they beat Kilkenny in 0-1 and 0-5. Like that's kind of ingrained in our memories. And they came with that flash. But then in the finals, they never really reached those heights again. Whereas probably the being in Leinster gives them that opportunity to build a bit of momentum, to get a bit of confidence, and to really see where they're shaping their team and what way they want to play. And I think that's been a benefit to them over the years.
So if you just look at the games that we've seen recently in the championship, so Galway swatted aside Wexford, winning 127 to 17 points, whereas Kilkenny went 16 points ahead, were brought back level by Dublin, and eventually won 320 to 222. Are you in the camp that feels that, like Adrian Ronan, who I spoke to last week, that Kilkenny switched off, or is it more that Dublin kind of rejigged their team, put in the sweeper, put on scoring forwards, and all of a sudden Kilkenny struggled to deal with that?
I think there's a little bit of both. I don't want to sit in the fence on this, but I think there is
Well,
a
you
little
look
bit of
cosy
both.
up there at the minute.
I think Kilkenny took the eye off the ball a small bit. There was that little bit of a drop in momentum, a drop in drive. And when you do that, as you know, Shane, in a match, it's so hard to turn it back around again. Because if anything, I think Brian Cody would have been delighted that with Kilkenny, how they set the tone in the first half, put up a big score. There was real work rate. You saw TJ doing a turnover for one of the goals, I think it was Billy Ryan's. And it was that happening throughout the field. Nearly every player for Kilkenny was having a reasonably good game, you could say, and was probably an 8 out of 10 in that first half. So from that point of view, I think it was great for Kilkenny. And at half time, in some ways, as a Kilkenny supporter, I was a bit disappointed that we weren't seeing more of a battle. Come 70 minutes, I was actually sitting on the edge of my seat hoping we'd make a Leinster final. And I do agree that there was Dublin made changes, and you'd have to give credit to them for making the changes, and it definitely did work. I mean, Eamon Dillon came away with 4 points. Ronan Hayes got a goal and was just creating havoc inside. So, I mean, those changes definitely made a difference. Conor Burke as well coming back and sweeping up a lot of ball. Kilkenny struggled to win their own puck out in the second half more so than the first half, and it definitely fed into that. There was a situation where I do feel Kilkenny, maybe if they scored a few what we would call easy chances, Walter Welsh, Pádraig Welsh. I saw Pádraig Welsh getting the ball and I said, well, thank God, it's the right man on the ball now, he'll pop it over. And it was just so uncharacteristic, I mean, for Pádraig to miss that chance. And I think that was kind of set the tone for the second half in a way that there was that little bit of edginess to Kilkenny, that they weren't really full of confidence like they were. And as I said, when you lose that bit of momentum, it's very, very hard to get it back again. Whereas if Pádraig and Walter were able to pop over those points, it would have just kept that little bit between it and would have stopped the momentum of Dublin. And I was thinking at the time, maybe we were lucky there was no crowd there, because when the momentum is coming like that, and if there was a bit of a crowd there, that might have fed into Dublin's comeback even further.
What do you think of Kilkenny's forward line at the moment? Of course, TJ Reid and Colin Fennelly anchor it, but do you think there's enough there otherwise to trouble teams if, let's say, Galway can find the right matchup for TJ Reid, which Dublin didn't in the first half?
I think it would be difficult for Kilkenny if TJ is not contributing 1-9 per match. Like, that's definitely a big thing. But yet he seems to do that continuously, even though everyone knows he's that dangerous, and that's what the best forwards do. I'd like to, it would be a great help if Adrian Mullen was back in there. But then I look and say, look, Colin Fennelly at the edge of the square is always going to be a danger. Billy Ryan, I thought, did very well the last day. I know it wasn't his first outing, but look, he's kind of one of those players who I think is coming into that period of his career where he can drive on now, and I hope I see that, because it took a lot of us a lot of time, maybe 3-4 years to break onto the team, and Billy's probably knocking around for 2 or 3 years now as well, and I'm hoping he can take that step as well. John Donnelly, I think, fantastic player as well. Probably won't hurt the scoreboard as much as those other players, but yet he's always tipping in with his point or two. Owen Cody then is the next man who obviously had to start the last day. Surprisingly enough, I suppose that he by reports he had done damage in a corner forward in challenge matches against Clare and against Waterford, but yet started at centre forward and probably wasn't in the game as much as we would like to see. And I thought maybe sometimes Brian maybe likes to put a younger player back out into the half forward line to give him that little opportunity to get into the game more. But I suppose the way Kilkenny were playing was a direct ball because TJ and Colin and Billy were doing damage inside. So look, I think every team knows how good TJ is, but I think there is some firepower around the edges. And sorry, I didn't even mention Walter Walsh, who came away with 3 points, could have came out maybe 1-4. So one of Dublin got, I think Owen O'Donnell got back for a great hook. So look, there's scoring potential there. I'd still be very happy that Kilkenny got 3 goals. I mean, there's not that many goals going. If you look at the other match between, even though Galway were so dominant, they still only came away with 1 goal. So, I mean, I think Kilkenny are still in a decent enough place.
Yeah, and do you like the half back line that lined out the last day? Killian Buckley was wearing number 8, but for my money he was in the half back line, and Danny Sutcliffe, and then Paddy Deegan and Pádraig Walsh. Is there enough size? Like, I mean, we know that Galway normally have a huge team. Conor Cooney's a big man, Joe Canning, Colin Mannion played in the half forward line.
Yeah, I suppose I wouldn't put it down to size as much as I think I would like it because they're good ball winners in the air, every one of them. Pádraig is excellent. Killian has a fantastic leap. And Paddy Deegan has been very good for O'Loughlin's at centre back for a couple of years now. So I would be happy with that. And when you're saying would you have size, I wouldn't be looking to replace them with anybody else. There's no one, like when I saw the half back line, I was delighted. And you look at Killian had a job to do, and that was to follow Danny Sutcliffe to a fair extent. And that's not an easy job for any man to do, because you're not going to just kind of be reading the game as much and hitting lots of ball. It's a job that you're going to have to follow. He probably won't have that job in come the weekend. I think it'll be a more straightforward play your half-back positions. But the difficulty, of course, there, as you said, they have massive lads in the half-forward line with Joseph Cooney, Conor Cooney, Joe Canning, Jason Flynn can go out there as well. Colin Mannion can come in, all 6'2", 3. So it is a difficulty, there's no doubt about that. But that's where we have to either try to win the ball, clean the air, or get to the ground and win that 50-50 battle on the ground, which isn't easy with the way Galway are producing it at the moment.
Well, what would you be most concerned about looking at that Galway team?
1 to 15, Shane, maybe. No, look, they're a savage team. I was you're looking at the score, and there are 10 different scorers the last day, and none of the half-forward line, well, we say Joseph, Conor or Joe scored from play. If I'm right in that, I think they didn't. But I think their work rate has gone so high now that the boys are happy enough not to score. What I'd probably be most concerned is Conor Whelan one-on-one with anybody. When you have Conor Whelan in there on the inside line, is such a difficult proposition to deal with. And because they play Joe at centre forward, a centre back can't really sit. So in a way, there's going to be opportunities maybe for 40-50 yards in front of Conor Whelan and Brian Concannon. So that's what would concern me. But that nearly concerns me every match when I look at it's not an easy job for a full back, as you well know, to be going out, and you're likely to be marking the best player in one of the best players in the country at the moment, whether it be Patrick Horgan. I know he moved to half-forward line, but Seamus Callanan, you're talking Colin Fenleys, you're talking Aaron Gallans. So it's not an easy job, and I suppose it's the job of Hugh Lawler now, and possibly maybe Conor Delaney. I'm only naming 2 because that's the reality, I suppose, of hurling at the moment. It's 2 on the inside line. So that's what I'd be most concerned about. But I think the biggest way to defend against that is to try stop the supply. And I think that's what Limerick did against Tipperary, actually, So I think that's the way to go about it if you can.
Yeah, and Joe Canning, would you put Killian Buckley on him, or would you be thinking someone else might be more suited? Because you already mentioned him doing the man marking job in Sutcliffe.
No, I'd be happy enough for Paddy Deegan to play centre back, and if Joe's drifting, you're depending on your midfielders and your half forwards to close that space down. I think that's what Kilkenny did against Limerick last year, with John Donnelly and Walter Walsh working back very deep and doing a lot of that work to close the space. I think if you do it any other way and you start following the Galway players off out the field, that fear I have will probably come true, really. So I think you have to still try stay some way tight at the back, and depend on your half forwards and midfielders to get through a mountain of work. Yeah,
because if I was to go back to the All-Ireland final last year, I thought Pádraig Walsh, who's a brilliant player, got caught between 2 stools with John McGrath. He didn't know whether to lead or drive, and that is the risk. You probably played centre back over the years many times. It could be, when you're on top, it's a brilliant position, but if your team is under pressure, it can be very difficult.
It can be very difficult, because I think with those centre forwards we've spoken about, especially Joe Canning hits 2 or 3 points early on in the match, and now you're immediately under pressure. So I mean, it's whether to get out on him. I don't think a centre back can generally get out there and stay out there. It's just too risky, and it just leaves too much space at the back. So I wouldn't be looking, like you said, but I think if Pádraig Welch was caught like that last year, I think you still have to look to your half-forward line and your midfielders to be doing so much work that they're almost eating up John McGrath coming into that space. I think that's what Limerick are doing brilliantly at the moment. I think that's what Galway have the potential to do and are doing, did against Wexford, really. They followed all the runners. They, like I said, the half-forward line didn't score, but they were going back the other direction so much. And that's what led to so much room inside. And also, if you look at the scorers coming through, you had Sean Loftus, Pádraig Mannion, Shane Cooney, Johnny Cohen, Cathal Mannion, all scoring, coming the other direction. So it's almost like they're just swapping over. The half forwards now are just savage work and savage defenders.
And you'd imagine there's a bit of joy to be had for Kilkenny in the full forward line. If Gerard McInerney is playing full back, let's say Daithí Burke doesn't make it, maybe even Fintan Burke won't make it either. but he is a native half back, so surely you can get a bit of joy there.
Yeah, well, like looking at the club form of Colin Fenney, you would be looking to get ball inside early and often, really, and that's regardless of who's there. I'm not saying that's because Garrod McInerney's there. I think that would be what Kilkenny would traditionally try to do, to get the ball in there and to cause trouble. I suppose the interesting one for me is will they go with TJ inside, or will they play TJ out centre forward? He did so much damage, it would be hard not to put him inside at the start and try get an early goal, to cause Galway just to maybe rethink things a little bit. I think Galway were so well set up against Wexford. They had their homework done so well. But that was for a very specific sort of opposition, in a way that they had to track the runners. How many times did we see Cathal Mannion or Conor Cooney working back and just picking up a runner? And at times the ball never went to that runner. So they worked so hard in that way. I think they'll be ready in a way for Kilkenny's setup, but yet it's all about how much of supply you can get inside. And if Kilkenny can get early supply in there and Collins on form, look, it gives Kilkenny a great chance.
Do you get a sense that Shane O'Neill has hit the ground running with this Galway team? Like, what I've seen this year was a couple of really good performances in the league, and the one that stood out was the comeback against Tipperary. They were very much swatted aside by Limerick in a game in the Gaelic grounds. But having seen them again now, and seeing the likes of Brian Kincannon stepping up, Sean Loftus, who you mentioned, they do look like they're the real deal again.
Yeah, they definitely look like the real deal, and those players, and Pádraig Mannion's midfield looks really good as well. I mean, he was driving forward anyway from wing back, but now maybe this gives him even more license. He's just such a good player. I think with the likes of Pádraig Mannion, with Shane O'Neill probably saying, look, you just go out and play. Just play your own game, because he's so naturally good at going forward, and he has that this defensive instinct as well. So I think they have, you look, to see that level of work rate and just pure honesty from Galway, it looks like they have bought into what Shane O'Neill has brought to the table. I think they would be hugely disappointed initially to lose Micheál Donoghue, but look, I think they've moved on from that, and maybe the lockdown period has been very, very good to them, that they, as we all know, they're all physically in great shape, but they seem to have a real go about them, and look, they'll be hurting from last year as well, and to not have gone on to the Leinster final. I think, look, they had a very good win against Kilkenny in Nolan Park, and they looked very strong, and to have gone out the way they did last year, I think they'll have the bit between their teeth, and that's probably a concern for Kilkenny in that way.
Yeah, so like Galway last won it in 2018, Kilkenny last time in 2016, and I think were Galway to win this, or Kilkenny not to win this, it'd be only the third time in their history that they haven't won it for 4 years. And you know, there's the prospect of 3 final defeats in a row. I mean, is that a concern for Kilkenny, not winning silverware for a few years at this point?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's a concern for any team that probably has a history of winning, but it is a concern. But at the same time, it won't be mentioned in the Kilkenny camp. It won't come into play. There will be no stats given on how long they've gone without winning. It'll be just focused completely on Sunday. So there won't be that. And I was disappointed after the Dublin match originally, but as we come closer to this match, I think I'm happier that happened in the second half, because if Kilkenny, what advantage was it to Kilkenny to win by 15, 20 points, which they were on course to probably do? No advantage whatsoever. We've seen it before. Teams win by cricket scores, the next day they come out and they can't reproduce it. Whereas I think now, certainly there'll be no one getting ahead of themselves. Brian will look at it. I think we'll probably see a change or two. What those changes are, it's always difficult to read, and especially now, like with no one seeing anybody or talking to anyone or any hint of what's coming out of training. So, I mean, it will just be interesting to see that. But I think it's good for Kilkenny. I think there's something to build on still. I'd be hoping that even there will be a disappointment in Kilkenny after the second half, which is a good disappointment. I think it's good mentally the way for Kilkenny going into this match.
What way would Brian Cody be in a dressing room leading up to a match like this? Is he all revved up, or what's he like?
For mostly he's calm. Mostly he'll be calm. He'll be just getting a few pointers across in the different training sessions. So if they're training tonight, now obviously they won't be doing a whole lot on a Wednesday night. So they'll it'll be all just ball work tonight. But he will be getting a few points across through a number of different training sessions. And then if they're meeting maybe Friday night before the match, then he'll go through the team. I mean, that's always a big one where he flicks over the sheet and you find out if you're starting or not. Look, the majority will know. One or two may not know, and then he'll just Look, there's times you would go out the door on a Friday night and you'd only be mad to play the match. He certainly tends to hit the right tone, and look, I would be expecting Kilkenny to come with a big performance on Sunday or Saturday night. Will it be enough? I don't know, but I definitely think they will come in hard into this match and give a performance with a lot of energy, a lot of work rate, and hopefully we'll see that on Saturday evening.
And a final question then, gun to the head, do you think Kilkenny will do it?
I just feel that Galway are that little bit stronger at the moment. I know I never like going against my own and the shot.
Yeah, I'm surprised you are.
Yeah, but look, all you can read it on is the form we've seen, and the form we've seen is that Galway are definitely favourites for this match, and it's very hard to go against them with what they produced the last day. You've probably mentioned it already in terms of physicality, but they also have the skill and that inside throughout the team, and they have that mix of the long and short game as well. I'm not saying Kilkenny don't have these things. I just think Galway just are a little bit further along for that, and hopefully I'm wrong with you.
Okay, well, brilliant stuff, Michael. Really appreciate you joining me.
No bother at all, Shane. Thank you.